To start it in Photoshop, this is part 2 of your video. You have the zip file downloaded. We need to go back into that file. And you need to click back onto the mockup that you chose. So I started in mockup 1. If you started in mockup 2, go ahead and click on that. Each of these files has the files that you need. So we're going to click on the Illustrator album cover. And I want to explain what this is. The bleed is going to be the area we're going to take our ping all the way to the edge. And the inside area here is your cushion where all of your text is going to go. So we're going to first go ahead and place our PNG of our album cover. So I'm going to check to make sure it's a PNG, not a Photoshop file. Stretch it all the way out. And then I'm going to go into my layers. So remember, in Illustrator, always make sure that you have your layers organized. I'm going to do title, and then I'm going to do the artist. Okay. For my title, I'm going to go ahead and grab my text tool. Make sure you lock those layers that you're not using. And this is where in your properties you saved somewhere under this menu your fonts from your library. If you did not do that, you would go back to Adobe Fonts and you would add the fonts that you like to your add the families, and those will get stored into your Adobe account. I unfortunately lost a couple of them from last year that I used for my project, but I'm going to pretend that they're inside of here, and I'm going to start by choosing my first one. I would suggest that you use two different fonts for this, because you're going to have the title and then you're going to have the artist. The two fonts can look similar to each other, but I would try, just for interest purposes, to make them a little bit different. Also, the size is going to create that visual hierarchy. So I'm going to start off with my title of my album, and I'm going to make it larger than the name of the artist. Also think about the alignment of your text, making sure that it's perfectly centered with the artboard. Okay, and then you're going to go ahead and think about the color. You can even go in and actually, while it's selected with the selection tool, add an appearance effect. I like stylize and like to go to drop shadow. You might want to experiment with some of the other options. Okay, and I like the way that looks, and I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer. I'm going to grab my artist layer, grab my text, and then this time I'm going to switch fonts. So I'm going to find something a little fancy, but I also want something that doesn't look exactly like the one above. So I'm going to try to go with, let's try this one. All right. Now I can change the color. I can keep it the same. I can add more effects to this. I think I'm just going to keep it white, and I'm also going to make it smaller. Because although she is important, to the cover, I want her name to be the secondary font or the subheading type font that I want to use. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what? I don't like the way this looks. I want to go ahead and switch it. So I'm going to try a different font and kind of play around with what I think works. Okay. And maybe I want to keep it white, but I just want to change the stroke color. So I'm going to use my stroke, and I'm going to find a darker color and make it white. And that stroke is way too thick, so I'm going to go ahead and drop it down. Okay, so now the name is popping off of the design. Okay. So, a couple things to keep in mind. Make sure you've stayed in your cushy area. You haven't gone past your inside box. Make sure that you check your spelling. I have a tendency to spell Jolene incorrectly, so I made sure that I spelled it correctly. Also check the spelling of the artist. That would be awful if you spelled it wrong and disrespected them that way. So we want to make sure this looks appropriate. Okay, once we're done, we're going to go ahead and save as, and we're going to save it as an Illustrator file. I'm going to save it to the same place I've been saving my other files. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export it as a ping. This ping is going to be what I'm going to use for my mock-up, which is going to be the next assignment inside of Canvas. Okay, so as of now, I have 2 pings that I'm going to be turning in for this assignment. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. I need to go from student view. Oops, that's because this isn't published yet. Let's publish it. Okay, so down here at the bottom, I'm going to click and I'm going to find my 2 PNGs. So I've got my PNG that I originally made for my album cover that I just completed right now. And then I have an additional PNG that I'm using for my record art. So this assignment is going to require 2 different PNGs. Make sure you put in both or you're only going to get half credit. And then you'll be all set up to go for the mock-up project. Submit the project, and now I have my 2 right here. All right, that is part 2 of the Photoshop project.